Yo, what's up everyone? It's Dynamics. It's been a hot minute since I've done a video. I won't get into the reasons why. All I can say is my life is very, very busy. But I've been off and I'm currently sick with some kind of horrendous flu. I'm on the tail end of it, but it still has me at home. And so I've decided to take the opportunity to do a video again. I've been thinking about it for a while. It's always sitting there in the back of my mind. So here we are. So thanks very much for joining me. And you know, if you're a returning person, thanks. And for those of you who are new, welcome. And hope you like the video today. Make sure that you like and subscribe, especially because it helps this channel, and it's actually slowly just been growing by itself, even though it's been a while. So I would like to build this channel up more, but I also want to do videos that actually are meaningful rather than for content's sake. That being said, today we're going to get into synthesized drums, particularly how they're built, but also we'll look at how you'd potentially use them in terms of application. And I've decided to do this video because a dude reached out to me on Instagram asking me to look into the subject. I haven't actually listened to any of the references that he may or may not have sent at this point in time, but here we are. So let's crack on. Right, so first up, what I've done is I actually spent a whole lot of time working on synth drums. Mainly to kind of learn it, really, but I built these synth kicks and snares and some hats and stuff as part of my own toolkit that were uniquely mine. So we'll use these as the thing to look under the hood of to actually help us understand it. And then hopefully from there, you should be able to go away and do this yourself. So the synth we're going to be using is Serum 2. These were originally made in Serum 1, but it's obviously all housed here, so let's just rock on. Right, so I've got Serum 2 open in this preset. This preset is very, very straightforward. It's very, very simple. And for all intents and purposes, this is actually often all you'll need. It kind of depends, are you building synth drums to be standalone drums, or are you building synth drums to layer with breaks? That would be the first question to be asking yourself, because sometimes you just want to add like synth drums underneath to give something like a little bit more punch or make it sound a little bit more modern. So, it really depends on application. But this one, we've just got a sub oscillator and oscillator B, both in sine waves pitched down. And if we look at our matrix, the envelope 1, which controls the amplitude of the overall signal, is focused on the main tuning. So it's, pitching up and down in a really, really tight curve here. Okay. So bounces down, and then really simply all I've done is I've taken a kick transient from inside of Serum as the portion to layer over the top. All right, so that's already sounding like a kick, pretty basic. And then it goes into the filter, and we've got LH6, so 6 decibel octave curve. So it's just rolling off those tops, just softening it out a little bit, and I'm just driving it a little bit as well. Okay, so really where it comes together is in the effects section. So the first thing I've done here is I've gone for a sine shaper, and I've got the mix at 50%. So let's play it without and then engage it. So the harmonics start to fill up because it's getting hit by the sine wave. The harmonics start to fill up those gaps and make the sound more fuller. Then we've just got a 24 decibel octave curve low pass filter with a bit of resonance in there, just pulling up the top. So shaving off the very top, but giving it a pop at the top. That's with, and that's without. Okay. Where it'll really come together is in the compressor. So you'll see I've got it put into multiband mode. And so if you listen now, and we'll engage the compressor and you'll see what really happens. It's like night and day, and it just brings that whole sound to life. It still sounds very much like an acoustic kick, which is obviously what I was going for when I was doing this, particularly because the intention here is that I'm likely going to layer it with breaks. Right, so we've got that going on. And then we've got a reverb. Now, the reverb here is controlled by LFO1, and you can see it's just feeding into the mix, and we've just got this this slightly off center triangle. And so what I'm doing is I'm just letting the space open and then close back up again. So it creates the sense of space without it being overly dominant. If I push it forward, you'll hear what it really does. Okay, and so it's small size, no pre-delay, really the shortest decay. Okay, so it's just tight, quick, and creates a sense of width. And that's there for you if you want it or not. And I can choose, depending on the application, to bypass this or keep it engaged. Okay, and then finally, we've just got an EQ, which is purely for shaping. So I've got a high cut. So that's obviously cutting out those bottom ends, but you see I've got the Q pushed up, or, you know, resonance if it was a filter, but the Q's pushed up, so it's actually pushing into those sub-regions. And then I've used the other one on a wide band with a wide Q to just lift up through the mids here. And you could do this the opposite way. You could leave it flat and then just tuck where the scoops happen here, and then do like a high band and tuck it, but you get a slightly different shape. So one's additive, one's subtractive, but there you go. This is what we've used to shape it. So quite a big difference there, with and without. So this is without and with. Right, and that's it. Like that's as far as I'd want to take the kick. I'd probably do the other processing inside of the mix once I've got things moving in the direction I want it to. So let's move over to a snare. Now, there's all sorts of ways to approach snares. So what I'm going to do here, I'll just bypass all the effects on here, and we'll do the same thing. We'll go from the ground up. Okay, so a lot more going on in terms of use of the LFOs as envelopes, etc. Now let's just play the sub oscillator. Right, so the sub oscillator is just moving along and ticking really nicely. I'm just going to see which envelope it's attached to, because I can't remember. There we go. It's just on envelope 1. All right, so you can see it's just pushing on the level. It's just a little bump tucked underneath. Right, and then we've got oscillator A. So the difference is this 1 octave up. So we've created an octave above and below. All right, so that's creating tonal shape, and again, that's just bumping against the level. We can see I'm using this one here, and the difference, I've just used a slightly different shape. Okay, and then we've got oscillator B. Now oscillator B is using a wavetable, and if we look here, it's moving the wavetable position. So envelope 3 is moving that wavetable position through, and you can see we end up with a wave that's far more harmonically rich. Okay, and then again we've got the level being moved by the same envelope. Okay, didn't use the third oscillator because that didn't exist in the first instance of Serum. And then we got noise. Right, so the noise helps to create the rattle of the snare. And if you look at envelope 4, you can see here that I've got an envelope that is sort of zigzag just at the beginning, and that's just to create that kind of natural fuzz, or an attempt to. See how it kind of claps? There's like 2 really quick successive hits, and that's just to emulate, or an attempt to emulate, what a real snare drum does. And then finally, we've got the filter, which has got a high cutoff, right? And I can see here I've got that routed to envelope 5, so this is doing a little bit of a quick move. Don't know why I chose to do that, but hey, there it is. So we've got the high cut there, just a bit of drive, bit of fatness, okay? And then the resonance is obviously just pushing up. So that's just starting to push up that fundamental. And again, everything comes together in the effects section. So straight off the bat, we've got a multi-band compressor. So as soon as you start using compression or multi-band compression, it's likely to bring the sound to life a lot more. Okay, so without and with, right? So we can start to really hear it take shape. Then I've got some distortion, which I've got in hard clip mode. With a hard clip, we're likely to get a much more pronounced transient. Yep. Okay. Then we've got the equalizer, and you'll see here I've used a high cut with a high pitch Q. So I'm really, what I would have been doing as I was working this was looking for that fundamental frequency that I was working at. And you could obviously move this frequency around if you decided it sounded better because of the pitch of the snare you're working at, easy to adjust. Okay, and then as far as that goes, I've just got a little bit of a lift on the top. So without and with. Okay, so yeah. That bottom end, which is sounding really boxy, it's just cut out and it just tightens the whole sound up. Right. Then I've got reverb, and the same principle here that I showed on the kick drum. We've got the this shape like this, which is just allowing the reverb to open up and then close again around it. So without and with. So it just creates that space, and we could, you know, change the decay to make it sound a bit different. Okay, and then finally we've got the filter, just on a 6 decibel cutoff. So it's just shaving off the tops and just pushing up on the top a little bit with the resonance. So that's just to add a bit more shine. So we hear without and with. Okay, subtle, but it's doing something. Okay, brilliant. And I'll see how I've built a macro into it. This one called Lo-Fi. So all I've done is I'm moving the cutoff frequency on the last filter. Now this might be quite useful as well if you're especially using like layered drums, because maybe the sample that is in the break that you're using and you're tucking this underneath is already like fairly bright and you don't need more brightness added to it. So being able to shave off the top to blend in will be quite useful as well. Okay, finally, I just want to move down to hats, right? So hats is actually really straightforward. So I'll turn these effects off, and straight up, like when you're doing hats, you can do it all with noise. So it's all about using shapes, right, that are going to make something sound really tight. And you'll see in my LFO, I've got a retrig, so it's basically acting like a loop. All right, and it's just shaping the noise. Simple as, right? And then it's going through a high pass filter. So if I take the filter off, it'll probably sound quite different. It sounds really like noisy and soft and waffly, but as soon as you take out those lows, it starts to tighten it up. All right, and then we go over into our effects section. So I'm going into the distortion. I'm using the stomp box model. So that just helps to really shape it up. Then we've got some multi-band compression, which will bring it to life surely. Yep, lots of attack. And then we've got this delay here, which is currently doing nothing, but I'll show you in a sec. And then we've got an equalizer, which has just got another high cut. And that's just to cut off anything that's been reintroduced through particularly the distortion and the compression, which can sometimes, you know, bring low end information back in. So we're sitting there and going, cool. So there's two macros I've built into it. So the first one is this one here, which is add tail. Okay, and add tail, if we look into our matrix here, macro one is going into the compression release, right? Which is, it's probably something that maybe you've not seen before. But so using the release to change the sound or the feeling. Cool. All right, and then we've got add doubles, which is where this delay comes into play, right? And you can see that's added to the mix, right? So when I go and play, so we can start to make it really skip and get that kind of shuffling kind of vibe going on. So that's just set on 1/8 dotted, okay, equally left and right. So we've got ourselves a little bit of a vibe there. So let's take it another step further. Okay, so what we're going to do, I've quickly gone into my samples and just grabbed some quick ones. So I've grabbed a kick drum, I've grabbed a snare drum, and we're just going to start with those sort of bare blocks first. So I'll show you the kick. Now the kick sample that I've grabbed is this one. So this is a kick from a Enai pack, big up Enai, right? So all I'm doing now is I'm just grabbing this and I'm going to high pass it because I want to take out the low body of that kick and use the low body of the kick sample that I've got. So we're just taking that top shape, right? And then we've got our original kick, our synth kick, and then we're just going to layer these together. Right, so I've got that bottom punch, and then all I've done is kind of balance them out. But what I'm going to do, I'm also going to add in this clipper. And the clipper's on, is going to, I've got on soft clip mode, but I've pushed the saturation up a bit because I've already got a sample with a strong attack. So if I want to bring out the attack more with the clipper, I'll use a hard clip, but with a soft clipper, it kind of rounds things out a little bit. So that's what I'm picking for this particular scenario. Okay, so we've got that level pushed up. And then we're just going to balance it. Get some of that low mid information back from that other kick. Right, so there's the kick. We'll just leave it there for now. And then we've got the snare, which is this one by, I'm not sure, is this one of, yeah, Emilio, HLZ, Badman producer. Check out his tunes, as well as E9's. Alright, so all I'm going to do with this one as well is I'm going to get rid of this low end information. Just round it off a bit. And what I've been doing just when I grab these is I quickly jumped into Vision just to kind of get an idea of where the pitch was. Okay, so good to use visual stuff, but I also, you know, use my ears. And then we've got our sample layered in. Sorry, not our sample, our synth. So that's with and without. Okay, cool. All right, so we're making some ground. Now I'm just going to go over here and we'll come back to this hi-hat synth that I made. And all I've done is open up that tail function. And let's put these things together. Nothing ultra groundbreaking yet. I should probably label this one HiHat Synth. Okay, so I want to grab another instance of Serum 2 here. And I've got this other synth hi-hat that I made. This one. Yeah, so I want to get that. And I'm just going to copy this down here and I'm just going to bounce this to a new track. I just want to get the audio loop. I can get rid of this. Okay. I might play with the timing of this. I start here. So I might keep that for like a bit of a move during the sequencing for phrasing. And then I've just gone and I'm just gonna turn those solos off and I've just got a top here. Okay, so we've got some pretty modern sounding DnB drums going now. And the other thing that I've got in here is this other little loop from HLZ as well, which I just quickly grabbed as another little bit for phrasing. So we'll be able to use that. So I'm already getting an idea of where I can take this. I might just quickly make an arranging block. Right, That'll make life a whole lot easier. Now, I'll bust that out into 4 parts. I'm just going to quickly do something like maybe like this and that. Or this. Let's try this. Cool. All right. So now that I've got this where it is, naturally, one of my things I always do, I start to mix the drums. I really try to make sure my drums are like smackingly good before I kind of go any further. So I won't make this video about that, but I'm quickly gonna do some mixing, but I will show you some stuff on how I'd bus it to kind of like bring this together, so you get an idea of how you'd bring cohesion to all of this. Okay, so I've done a really quick sort of mix. So I've pretty much just taken these layers, the snare layers and the kick layers, and I've routed them to individual buses. I've got a hi-hat bus, which these 2 are going to, and then I've got these top layers, which are going to a tops bus. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a add effects channel, right? So all of these are going to route to this effects channel here. Okay, so everything's going to route inside of there, and I'm gonna like grit this up. I'm gonna give it a good old smashing. Okay, so I'll go to minimal audio, and I'll grab Rift. And we're going to get a bit gritty with it. Chuck on this hard clip. We'll just try a different one on the negative waveform. Right, so it's obviously sounding like pretty cool like that, but then we're going to bring the channel fader down and blend it in. Right, so everything's starting to get a little bit loud, so I'm going to just bring this all down, drop everything -6. Sorry, I shouldn't have been doing it there. I want to do it here. The reason this part here is the input, so this affects how things feed into the plugins, whereas the channel fader is obviously what comes after. You may be able to hear the sound of squawking children in the background. That's part of the reason I've been busy. Okay, so we've got that there. Now, what I'm going to do with this particular channel on FX1, which we're going to call like drum crunch, just for argument's sake. Okay, so I want to go and grab a transient shaper now. And you're like probably thinking, what's this guy up to? Yep. So I've like beefed it up, but then I'm going to take what I've made that's kind of beefy and I'm going to tighten it up. So let's listen to it again. Okay. Like negative 15.6, I think. Thereabouts. Okay. Let's see how the sound's blended in. Brilliant. Right, now what we want to do is take all of this and we're going to create a bus and call the drum bus. All right, and then all the kids are going to get on the bus. So I'm going to send that drum crunch, which is coming out of these buses, and they're looping over to here, while these buses are going into the overall bus. Maybe we'll call this the drum sum, just to help it make more sense. Okay, and then these are going into the drum sum. Also, this auxiliary send that's going from these into that is then looping back into that sum. So I'm kind of like grouping everything back in together to one cohesive point. Okay, so I'm going to use true iron, and I'm going to pop that on here. And now this is just emulating a bit of the sort of analog character. It's very subtle. You don't do this to do big wow things. You do it to do like subtle good things that all add up in the end. So I'll just bypass it. You need to be listening to this on headphones or speakers, guys, to be actually capture this. So without. Just opens it up a little bit. Okay. Right, the next thing I want to do is I want to get the Oxford inflator. So this is a really cool plugin. It kind of like the way I'd describe it, it's a bit like an expander. I could probably be a total nerd and go read the manual and tell you exactly what it is, but I'm not that kind of guy. I just know the tools and what they kind of do and get used to them. Not the most technical way of approaching things, but you know, it's like brushes and colors to me. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to apply the effect. And so listen to the drums and you'll hear the effect go in, and you see these little pop-ups. They tell you what's happening, right? So the overall inflator effect is applied to the program. Output overloads entirely or entirely avoided when the effect level control is set to maximum of 100%. So it's basically pushing up, and then this curve factor changes the way it behaves. So plus 50 makes it sound fatter, whereas negative 50 will produce like subtle changes to the sound, but still does something good. Okay, so it's just listen with your ears and see if you get something you like. I'm just going to drive it a bit because it has got a clipper. What do you know? Modern drums, just like that. And then we just have a little something to play with and start cooking a tune. That's it. I hope you've enjoyed the video and got something out of it. This is by all means not meant to prescribe to you a polished finish that takes you to the screaming heights of the record label. Obviously, like all tunes, you need to work them and mix them and get them sounding right. But this should definitely get you on your way of like synthesized drums and samples and, you know, mixing things together is, you know, what you're trying to do. I hope you found it helpful, and thank you for your time today. It's been great to see you all again. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. In the meantime, I need to go be a dad. Take care. Easy.